Hello, and welcome to Go Tell It on the Mountain, a channel inspired by God, meant for sharing His Word. Hi, my name is Heather, and I'm reading the Bible in chronological order, and I'm doing it on videos to share with the world. I'm glad that you are watching this video. The last episode, we read through Exodus 21 through 22, and that was about the Hebrew servants, God's rules for personal injuries, protection of property, and social responsibility. In this episode, we're going to read Exodus 23 and 24. And these are more laws from God, laws of mercy and justice, the Sabbath laws, the 3 annual festivals. There's also God's angels to prepare the way. And then the covenant confirmed, which is really interesting, and that's all of chapter 24. So let's get started with a word of prayer. Father in heaven, thank you for this day. Thank you for your word and our time in it. Thank you for all that we learn in reading the Bible, reading the words that you, the things that happened and the words that you inspired others to write down. Father, please open our eyes to what we read, our ears to hear the word and to hear you, our minds to understand, and our hearts to accept. Thank you, Father. Amen. Okay, so Exodus 23, laws of justice and mercy, starting at verse 1. Do not spread false reports. Do not help a guilty person by being a malicious witness. Do not follow the crowd in doing wrong. When you give testimony in a lawsuit, do not pervert justice by siding with the crowd, and do not show favoritism to a poor person in a lawsuit. If you come across your enemy's ox or donkey wandering off, be sure to return it. If you see the donkey or someone who hates you fallen down under its load, do not leave it there. Be sure you help them with it. Do not deny justice to your poor people in their lawsuits. Have nothing to do with a false charge, and do not put an innocent or honest person to death, for I will not acquit the guilty. Do not accept a bribe, for a bribe blinds those who see and twists the words of the innocent. Do not oppress a foreigner. You yourselves know how it feels to be foreigners, because you were foreigners in Egypt. At verse 10, we start with Sabbath laws. For 6 years you are to sow your fields and harvest the crops. But during the 7th year, let the land lie unplowed and unused. Then the poor among your people may get food from it, and the wild animals may eat what is left. Do the same with your vineyard and your olive grove. 6 days do your work, but on the 7th day do not work, so that your ox and your donkey may rest, and so that the slave born in your household and the foreigner living among you may be refreshed. Be careful to do everything I have said to you. Do not invoke the name of other gods. Do not let them be heard on your lips. At verse 14, we start with the 3 annual festivals. 3 times a year you are to celebrate a festival to me. Celebrate the festival of unleavened bread. For 7 days eat bread made without yeast, as I commanded you. Do this at the appointed time in the month of Aviv, for in that month you came out of Egypt. No one is to appear before me empty-handed. Celebrate the festival of harvest with the first fruits of the crops you sow in your field. Celebrate the festival of ingathering at the end of the year when you gather in your crops from the field. 3 times a year, all the men are to appear before the sovereign Lord. Do not offer the blood of a sacrifice to me along with anything containing yeast. The fat of my festival offerings must not be kept until morning. Bring the best of the first fruits of your soil to the house of the Lord your God. Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. Next is starting at chapter 20, God's angel to prepare the way. See, I am sending an angel ahead of you to guard you along the way and to bring you to the place I have prepared. Pay attention to him and listen to what he says. Do not rebel against him. He will not forgive your rebellion, since my name is in him. If you listen carefully to what he says and do all that I say, I will be an enemy to your enemies and will oppose those who oppose you. My angel will go ahead of you and bring you into the land of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivites, and Jebusites, and I will wipe them out. Do not bow down before their gods or worship them or follow their practices. You must demolish them and break their sacred stones to pieces. Worship the Lord your God, and his blessing will be on your food and water. I will take away sickness from among you, and none will miscarry or be barren in your land. I will give you a full lifespan. I will send my terror ahead of you and throw into confusion every nation you encounter. I will make all your enemies turn their backs and run. I will send the hornet ahead of you to drive the Hivites, Canaanites, and Hittites out of your way. But I will not drive them out in a single year, because the land would become desolate and the wild animals too numerous for you. Little by little, I will drive them out before you, until you have increased enough to take possession of the land. I will establish your borders from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea, and from the desert to the Euphrates River. I will give into your hands the people who live in the land, and you will drive them out before you. Do not make a covenant with them or with their gods. Do not let them live in your land, or they will cause you to sin against me, because the worship of their gods will certainly be a snare to you. Chapter 14, the covenant confirmed. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. You are to worship at a distance, but Moses alone is to approach the Lord, and the others must not come near, and the people may not come up with him." When Moses went and told the people all the Lord's words and laws, they responded with one voice, "Everything the Lord has said we will do." Moses then wrote down everything the Lord had said. He got up early the next morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain and set up 12 stone pillars representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Then he sent young Israelite men, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed young bulls as fellowship offerings to the Lord. Moses took half of the blood and put it in bowls, and the other half he splashed against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it to the people. They responded, "We will do everything the Lord has said. We will obey." Moses then took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, "This is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words." Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel went up and saw the God of Israel. Under his feet was something like a pavement made of lapis lazuli, as bright blue as the sky. But God did not raise his hand against these leaders of the Israelites. They saw God, and they ate and drank. The Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and stay here. I will give you the tablets of stone with the law and commandments I have written for their instruction." Then Moses set out with Joshua his aide, and Moses went up on the mountain of God. He said to the elders, "Wait here for us until we come back to you. Aaron and Hur are with you, and anyone involved in a dispute can go to them." When Moses went up on the mountain, the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai. For 6 days the cloud covered the mountain, and on the seventh day the Lord called to Moses from within the cloud. To the Israelites, the glory of the Lord looked like a consuming fire on top of the mountain. Then Moses entered the cloud as he went on up the mountain, and he stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. There is a lot packed into that reading of 2 chapters. I have a lot of notes and comments on this one. I always think when I read just a couple chapters, I don't have much to say. Well, that's not the case this time. So bear with me if you would like to stay and continue watching. The laws of justice and mercy, when it says, do not show favoritism to a poor person in a lawsuit, I wondered, why was that even written in there? But when I was looking it up, information I found was relevant to not showing partiality in a lawsuit, which I can understand that. And then apparently later in Deuteronomy, it says basically the same thing for the rich or the poor. So that made sense. Where it says, help your enemy with their wandering oxen or donkey, or if their load has fallen over. And that just made me wonder, could we do that today? If we saw someone we didn't like, whether it's students at school, there's always rivals and whoever, someone they don't like, or us having someone we don't like, and we're out and about and we see something happen. Do we just laugh and walk away, or do we go help them? We should go help them, right? And then when it says, for I will not acquit the guilty. So basically don't find someone guilty who's innocent or honest. God says, for I will not acquit the guilty. And no matter what humans do, God knows what we've done, and he knows who's guilty. So do the right thing. And we've seen in our lives people who have been innocent of a crime but are convicted. So where does that stand with the Lord when those things happen? Okay, the Sabbath laws. So this chapter, this is still chapter 23, introduces the Sabbath year to leave the feeds fallow. So that's the first introduction in the Bible for that. And the concept of a sabbatical leave every 7th year originates from the Sabbath year law. And then I know that farmers do leave. I don't know if they do it every 7 years, but I know about today, farmers still will leave a field fallow for a season to let it rest. Now, this reading was interesting because when God gives the instructions to do it so that the poor people can eat off of it and the wild animals. Again, God says to do everything he says. And he also says not to invoke the name of other gods. And boy, the Israelites. 3 annual festivals. So there's a lot of festivals. I say a lot of festivals, but festivals come up repeatedly through the readings, and we'll see that in the future too. So the ones listed here, the Festival of Unleavened Bread, held at the appointed time in the month of Aviv, which Aviv in Hebrew means spring or springtime. And that's when they came out of Egypt. So from the 15th day, because it was the 15th day when they left Egypt, because on the 14th was when they had the Passover meal. So the 15th to the 21st is when they're supposed to celebrate this festival and only eat unleavened bread, so bread without yeast. And back when we read the instructions for the Passover meal, the festival information was there too, and that was before the Exodus, them doing the Passover meal and leaving happened. So that was when they got the original instructions. Now, we probably talked about it back then. I probably talked about it back then, but the Israelites were supposed to eat bread made without yeast because that commemorates the type of bread they were supposed to make and eat for the Passover meal before God took them out of Egypt the next day. So they didn't have time for the rising of it, of the bread before the meal. So then doing that physical thing reminds them that God brought them out of Egypt. Then there's the Festival of Harvest, which is giving the best of the first fruits of the crops to God as a sacrifice. And then at the ingathering, same thing. When they bring in the crops, doing the same thing. Okay, so then all men are to appear before the Lord and bring sacrifices during their festivals. And actually, there was even the notation, hold on, between the festival of unleavened bread and then when it moves into the harvest and the ingathering festivals, it says, no one is to appear before me empty-handed, which we know is important to God. So he gives, there's then some additional rules for the sacrifices. The rule about not cooking a goat in its mother's milk, I wondered why that was even in there and specifically called out, and ew, that's gross. And so it said, when I looked it up, it said that might have been prohibiting the Israelites from doing something that would imitate a Canaanite fertility ritual. Okay. So at least that answered my question. Then when God talks about the angel preparing the way, again, he says, obey the angel, and the angel will not forgive rebellion because God's name is in him. Now, I found something that said some people think that perhaps Jesus, like a pre-physical bodied, Jesus was the angel because his name is in him. But that doesn't make sense to me because God made the angels. Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and God are 3 in 1. So that, I don't agree with that. Tell me what you think. So anyway, it says, by listening to the angel carefully and doing what God says, and he says, doing what I say. God will be an enemy to their enemies and oppose those who oppose them, the Israelites. And the angel will go ahead of them, and God will wipe out the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which I believe we looked at in a previous episode, were basically all descendants of Canaan, back from the days of Noah. So, to me, when I think about these things that God says, listen to me and I will bring you into the land that I've promised you, and I will go ahead of you, and I will be an enemy to your enemy and oppose those who oppose you. And he'll wipe out, because all along in his covenant with Abraham, then Isaac, then Jacob, right? And the Israelites, it had said that they were going to get this promised land and they were going to wipe out who was there. And it took 400 years for the sin of that land to be enough that they hadn't repented, that God would wipe them out. So now here we are at that time. So really, what a wonderful promise. And it's such a shame that the Israelites don't do a good job of obeying the Lord. And we'll see how repeatedly they disobey the Lord. That had to be so frustrating. And in this reading, God even plans out the length of time for driving them out, because he says he's not going to do it all in 1 year because that would be too hard on the land, which I find interesting. I would like to understand that itself more. But then he also talks about the promised land itself, the geography of it, from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean and from the desert to the Euphrates River. So we're going to look at our map. And over here, so I was looking up other maps that might show this better because it'll be wider, because the Red Sea, okay, so this is the Red Sea. Here's where they crossed. This is still a Red Sea here. This is the Mediterranean Sea. It doesn't say that on this. It's got a different name, Sea of the Philistines. And this is the Dead Sea right here. So the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea, so that's north and south. And then east and west, it's going to be the desert to the Euphrates River. So they're going to have like, I don't know if my finger's in the right spot, like Kadesh, I think, is the farthest west. And then over to the Euphrates, which is over here. So the Jordan runs along here, and the Euphrates is over here off of this map. So the estimated total range is from 60,000 square miles to 300,000 square miles. As the most. And then the north to south distance is often described as stretching 140 to 150 miles from the southern border which was the Red Sea, to the northern border up near Dan and Lebanon. So I'll find some other maps because eventually they'll get to where they're divvying up the land between the tribes. So we'll be looking at maps then as well. Now, other interpretations focus on the promised land, the promise of the land from the Euphrates to the river of Egypt. So the river of Egypt, I believe, is what here is called the Wadi of Egypt. And so this, and then if the Euphrates goes way over here, so it's an expansive territory, nearly the entire Fertile Crescent, it says. But usually the core territory is smaller. And we'll see that in the all the maps that I found. Again, just like that map, find maps that are ultimately similar, but still different. And none of them, I don't know that any of them actually reached out to the Euphrates River. But like the exact size and proportion of land that the different tribes had, it varies in some of them. So it's been a pretty interesting research mission to try to find what might be the best one. Okay, and then, so the verse, it says here, something I found said that the verse describes the idealized maximal boundary of the land, which is significantly larger than that area conquered and settled by the Israelites under Joshua, which relates back to what I just said about what I found with the maps. So yeah, spoiler alert, the Israelites, they don't follow God's instructions. So they pay. It's going to take us a while to get to where we read that, but yeah. Okay, the covenant confirmed. So this chapter, the Lord summons multiple people, right, to go onto the mountain to worship him, but only Moses is allowed to go up to the Lord. And Moses wrote down the laws that the Lord told him. That's called the Book of the Covenant. And I keep thinking, like, why was Moses the guy? And it has got to do a lot with that, right? Being able to memorize and then write those things down. And then we're going to find out later that Moses wrote some other things down too. So then he reads the laws from the Book of the Covenant to the Israelites, and all those laws that we've read so far, and they agreed to obey God, and he set up, so then Moses sets up an altar and the 12 stone pillars representing the tribes. Then the blood of the covenant, so that ritual that they went through with sacrificing the animals, and then I say animals, young bulls, it was plural, as fellowship offerings. Okay, so that was a ratification ceremony of the Mosaic covenant. So when we hear Mosaic covenant, this is what that is. So we had the covenant between God and Abraham when God originally said, Abraham, I'm going to give you your descendants the promised land, and your descendants are going to be a multitude, right? They're going to be, count the stars, the grains of the sand. I'm going to give this to your descendants. And so here we are. Moses is doing a blood covenant between God and the Israelites. So it seals the agreement between God and the Israelites at Mount Sinai. And Moses sprinkled the animal blood on the altar, which represents God. And then the people, symbolizing the binding life and death commitment, where Israel promised obedience and God promised to be their God. So then I was looking up information on that because I just always find these covenants very interesting. And information that I found, it had several sections to it, and it's a bit repetitive, but I really liked the information and I would like to share it. So the significance of the covenant was it established a formal holy fellowship between God and Israel, where they became a pledged community. Then the meaning of blood, the blood symbolized the penalty for breaking the agreement, which is death, and served as a reminder of the seriousness of their commitment to the law. And then symbolism in the covenant is that it highlighted the necessity of sacrifice for atonement and cleansing, as the people were purified through the sprinkling. And then the theological connection is that it is a precursor to the new covenant mentioned by Jesus at the Last Supper, where his blood, not animal blood, sealed a covenant of grace and forgiveness with people. And then this ritual, common in ancient Near Eastern treaties, established a suzerainty treaty where God, who is the sovereign entity, protected Israel, the vassal entity, in exchange for loyalty. So God protected Israel for loyalty. And I had to look up this word, suzerainty, because I had never seen that before. And it means a position of control by a sovereign or state over another state that is internally autonomous. Low tech here, people. So, okay, Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 elders saw God, saw the God of Israel. Now, how much of him did they see? That's unknown. Did they see a vision? Did they really see God? Did they only see his feet? Because it's thought that they saw a vision of him because later in Exodus 33 in verse 20, God says that no one could see his face and live. So this text that we read says that God did not raise a hand to them. So perhaps they only literally saw his feet. But it does say, they saw God and they ate and drank. The surface that he was standing on, made of lapis lazuli, as bright as the blue sky. So I looked it up. Lapis lazuli is a deep blue metamorphic rock prized as a semi-precious gemstone known for its intense color, often flecked with golden, pyrite, and white calcite. So look this up. Lapis lazuli says it's an aggregate of several minerals, primarily lazurite, giving the blue, but also containing calcite, which are the white streaks, and pyrite, golden flecks. It's beautiful. And I'm sure I've seen it before, but didn't think any significance of it until now. So prized since antiquity, it says it was ground into the expensive ultramarine pigment and used for jewelry, adornment, and even eyeshadow. So look it up. It's beautiful. All right. So they saw God and they ate and they drank. I mean, can you imagine? I just can't imagine. Every time in the Bible so far, someone's had an opportunity to see God, I just think, wow. All right, it's not clear how far they went up the mountain, but they didn't go all the way because God invites Moses to come to him up the mountain. And Moses brings Joshua, and that's really interesting because it's thought that because Joshua was Moses' assistant, that's why he was allowed to go up. Plus, God is omnipotent, omniscient, so he knows that Joshua is going to take over for Moses in the future. So it stands to reason that he would allow for Joshua to go up as well. The cloud covers Mount Sinai. So the cloud that covered the mountain as the glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai. That's just fascinating to me. And the cloud represents God's presence. So can you imagine waiting 6 days? Like you go up and you're waiting 6 days until God calls to you, which he called to him on the seventh day, which the timing kind of parallels the Sabbath. So I wonder what the cloud looked like to Moses when he went in, because it looked like an all-consuming fire, or a consuming fire on top of the mountain to the Israelites who were down below. So I wonder what that looked like. Now, there's an interpretation that says it looked like lightning. Not sure if lightning would be described as a consuming fire. That doesn't really make sense to me. But I looked up some information about the consuming fire. That was the representation of the glory of the Lord. And I found some things that said active holiness and judgment. The fire highlights that God is a consuming fire, which this text here comes from Hebrews 12:29. It says burning up anything unholy or sinful. It's a manifestation of God's righteous wrath against sin and his separation from humanity. It is purification and refinement. Like a furnace, this fire burns away dross and refines, indicating that God's presence both destroys what is corruptible and purifies his people. And then lastly, it's a call to reverence. This site was designed to instill godly fear and respect reminding the people of God's unmatched power. Just that one, I for sure would agree with. Okay, so then the last line is that Moses stayed up in the cloud it says he stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. So questions that come to my mind then, 40 days, 40 nights. Did they eat? What did they eat? Did they fast the whole time? Did God sustain them? What did they sleep on? Because he was over 80 years old at this point. So us now at 80, I mean, unless their bodies were so different back then that they could handle it. I just wonder these things because I'm not 80. I'm middle-aged. I'm 50. I cannot imagine sleeping on the ground. Whew, that would hurt. So, anyway, but the most important thing of all that is, can you imagine being in God's presence for that long? Even if he wasn't seeing him, but he was in his presence. So that, wow, I just find that like awe-inspiring to be the person who got to do that for the Lord. It didn't come with a lack of challenges that Moses had to deal with from the Israelites, but that's very special. All right. Well, that is it for today. If you have any other comments that you would like to add, feel free to put them in the comments. Anything that I talked about that you agree with, or maybe you have a different opinion on, or something I didn't talk about, feel free to put some comments in about that. Be productive and constructive, I always say. Anything destructive, if I can delete it, I will. Because that's not necessary. So, yeah, and I'm just very grateful to the Lord to have the opportunity to do this. He led me I wanted to read the Bible from chronological order, which is what we're doing here. And the Bible actually that I'm reading from is an NIV version that can be found in the description of the video. So the Lord just led me you need to read online. You need to read for others to read with you. And then they kind of turned into me giving commentary too as I was reading it, and then had some thoughts about it. And I was like, I need to say this too in the video. So here we are. And I'm just a full-time employee, a mom and a wife. I should say that in the reverse. I'm a wife, a mom, and an employee. And so that's why this is low tech. I'm going to spend a whole lot of time on the video. So the prep for it alone takes me a long time. So, all right. Well, thank you for watching today's video. Let's have a word of prayer before we go. Father in heaven, thank you so much for all that you do for us. Thank you for all that you did for the Israelites, Lord. Thank you for having it documented so that we can read about it, and that it's part of our Bible, part of our word from you, continuing on through this day, Lord. Thank you for the might and the majesty that you present to us and that you presented to them. Father, thank you for your guidance, for your protection, for your healing, and mostly for your love and your creation. Father, be with us in everything that we do. Father, when we seek you, let us find you. And God, I just pray that we feel your presence, that we sit quietly for it, to feel your presence and to hear your guidance, Lord. Hear your words for us. Thank you, Father. In your name I pray. Amen. All right. Well, please like and subscribe and share the video. And until next time, you have a blessed day. Oh, I didn't mention that our next episode, we're going to start getting into the tabernacle, God's instructions for the tabernacle. So it'll probably be Exodus chapter 25 and 26 for sure. I'm not sure about 27 just yet, but there are several chapters having to do with the instructions for the tabernacle itself and all the things inside of it, and then all the things for the priests. So we're going to be going through a whole lot of instructions for that, and then other things beyond that. So there's some events that happen kind of woven within those instructions. So it'll be an interesting read for us, but we'll be starting on that in the next episode. So, okay, until the next time, you have a blessed day.